Hello, my name is Taylor. In today's video, we are going to be taking fabric that I have thrifted and turning it into a coat that I can wear in Canadian winters. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here are the two beautiful fabrics that I have thrifted. So the first fabric is this beautiful orange corduroy. I love it. And then the second fabric is a bit of a thicker fabric as well, and it's just almost a marigold yellow fabric. Okay, and unfortunately, I don't have enough of each fabric to make a coat, you know, either out of the corduroy or the yellow fabric on their own, so I will be combining them. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make a sketch to show you guys how I want the coat to turn out. So here is my sketch for how I want the coat to turn out. So I'm going to be placing the corduroy fabric on the sleeves, okay, as well as the pocket area. And then I will be adding a zipper up the front, and I want a bit of a crew neck up top. A lot of my projects are just self-drafted. I'm not following a pattern, so that's exactly what I'll be doing with this one. Not following a pattern, essentially just taking my shoulder measurements and you know, maybe finding a coat that I have that fits me really nicely and, you know, following maybe that sizing. But I'll probably just end up taking my own measurements to make the coat. So now that we have the idea of what I want to make, let's go ahead and start making the pattern. All right, so now what we're going to start doing is I need to take a ton of measurements. So these are my measurements without seam allowance. So when I actually go and trace out the pattern, the shaping of everything, I will be adding seam allowance. So I'm not worrying about adding seam allowance now. I just took my basic measurements. So now I'm going to go ahead and trace out the shape. All right, so I have the fabric laid out behind me. So what I will start doing now is taking the measurements that I've taken from the piece of paper and drawing out, you know, the shape of a coat, okay? Based on what I know a coat looks like, based on projects that I've done in the past, how things fit my body. As I mentioned, I'll be self-drafting this project, which means I'm not using a pattern to create shapes. I'm essentially using my own ideas from my head to create shapes. Okay, so actually a really neat tool I'll be using, now from what I remember, it's called a seam gauge. It's super cool. It helps you figure out seam allowance, or if you're doing a hemline, you can just set it to what you want it to be, and then you can follow it on your fabric. So I'm gonna do that now for ensuring that I have the same amount of seam allowance on all of the pieces I'm drawing. back. I actually just got back from snowboarding. It is so cold where I live right now in Canada. So it's actually perfect timing that I will be making this coat. So let's talk about what I have so far. So far I have cut out the back panel, okay? And then I have also cut out both of the front panels. So here's one, and here is, whoops, the other. Okay, so with the front panels, they will be having a zipper sewn in the middle, so there will be a zipper putting them together. And then what we need to move on to do now is the sleeves. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and pin together each of the front panels to the back panel. Okay, I'm going to sew it at the shoulder seam, and then we're going to go ahead and cut out the sleeves out of our orange corduroy fabric. Alright, so one thing that I do want to mention about this fabric is that it will fray. I can already tell that it's going to fray, so that means I need to finish off the edge with a zigzag stitch. Now typically if you had a serger, you would just take your serger and finish off the edge. I do have a serger, but I've never used it. That's a future project for me, figuring out how to use it. Anyways, if you have an overcast foot, I'll put a picture right here of what that is. But if you have an overcast foot for your sewing machine, that is going to actually work great if you don't have a serger. It's essentially going to do the same thing. It's going to make a nice zigzag stitch on the edging of your fabric. Now I thought I had an overcast foot for my machine, but I don't. So I guess I'll just have to try my best to line up the edge of the fabric with the needle so that it makes a nice zigzag. But yeah, so right now I'm just going to sew the shoulder pieces or the shoulder seams for both sides. So once I'm done that, I will check back in. Okay, so I just want to show up close what it looks like when you will be finishing your edge to stop it from fraying. So as I mentioned, if you have a serger or an overcast foot, you would use that right now to finish up your edge nicely. I don't have either right now, so I will just be doing an overlock stitch on the edge of my fabric. A zigzag stitch could work as well, you know, if your machine isn't that advanced. But, so essentially I'm just going to go ahead and sew right on the edge of my fabric. But yep, that's all you'll be doing to stop the edges from fraying. And as you can see, right here, it looks very clean, nice and finished. So that's exactly what we want. What I will be doing is tracing the inside of the shape here, okay, with my pencil. Now, I measured that my arm is approximately 22 inches in length. So I'm going to go from the center. Okay, so I'm going to go from the center. So from the center point, I will be measuring 22 inches, okay? Inch of seam allowance, because you just never know. Now, I have also measured that I want the circumference around my wrist to be about 10 inches, right? At the base here, so I'm gonna line up that middle part. So actually I'm gonna draw a line straight down where the middle is. Okay, and that's where I will put there. Okay, and that's where I will line up 5 inches, right? Because we want it to be even on both sides. Okay. We're going to mark it, draw that line. This is a little bit of the tricky part of self-drafting is, you know, figuring out shapes and angles and all of that. You know, if you had a pattern you were working with. They would have obviously the sleeve shape and everything already drafted out. But because, you know, we are doing it ourselves, it can get a little tricky at times. But yeah, that's what we're working with. Okay. All right, so I have finished cutting out both sleeves. Now, my next step in the project is going to be cutting out the lining for the coat. Okay, so here's the lining that I will be using. So I actually thrifted this old blanket. And all right, so now that we have finished cutting out all of the lining pieces, what we are going to be doing is assembling the liner separately and then attaching it to the coat. So that way, once it's attached to the coat, we can actually just sew the underarms, okay, and then the sides, and it will all come together beautifully. Okay, so I have both the outer layer and the inner layer pinned at the sleeves. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and sew both of the sleeves on the inner and outer layer, okay? And then I will begin putting on the liner to the outer layer. Okay, so anytime that you have a curve in your sewing, so for this project it would be the sleeve, okay, the shoulder, what we'll actually be doing is going on the inside where we sewed and actually cutting it. So cutting it in little slits, okay? I'm just gonna cut little slits in it, and we're just gonna do that at the corners of each shoulder. Essentially, as you can see, they're already puckering a little bit. Yeah, right here. So anytime you see puckering, you're gonna give it a little cut, okay, a little slit, and that is just gonna open up that fabric and allow it to have the curve in it that we need it to have, okay? All right, so I just wanted to show that I pinned together both back sides, and they are right sides together, okay? So I do have a bit of extra that I will need to trim up, but yeah, I just wanted to show that I will be sewing on the bottom here, so that way, you know, when I flip it, it will have a really clean finish, right? And you won't see any raw edges that will require a bias tape. Okay, so we also will be doing an overlock stitch with these two fabrics, just so that the yellow fabric does not fray. All right, so I am trying on the shell of the coat that I have now. So I finished sewing up the neckline. As you can see, I did cut slits in it to allow for it to fold nicely and create that nice crew neck. Okay, and I've done the bottoms. This will be turned inside out. It's not done yet. And then I still have to sew the back. I was just so excited. I just couldn't wait to try it on to see how the neckline fit. Go to the fabric store and pick up a zipper, and I was so silly and I didn't measure it, the length of my coat, or I couldn't remember the measurement that I took. So I got a zipper that is way too long, but I will show you guys how. I will shorten the zipper later, but it's not too hard. Okay, so I actually want to show you guys something. If your sewing machine is squeaking, here, I'll try to do it. So I'm not sure if you can hear that. It is squeaking so bad, and so the reason it is doing that, if you ever hear your sewing machine making that funny noise, check your bobbin. It is probably 100% of the time going to be because your bobbin is stuck, you ran out of thread, you know. So what we're going to do now is open up my bobbin case at the bottom, and we're gonna go ahead and see what the issue is. I've lifted my needle up all the way, okay, and as you can see, I was right. My bobbin is stuck, okay. Oh, yeah. So sometimes, yeah, you just have to pull it. You know, sometimes there's no real reason why your bobbin gets stuck. Maybe, you know, there is just a thread in the way. You know, sometimes when you spin a bobbin, there can be a loose thread hanging off, you know, the top and the bottom of your bobbin, so that can get all twisted up. As you can see, I have one thread here, one thread there. So really important when you spin a bobbin, make sure you cut off all the extra loose threads. Alright, so I have finished sewing around the collar, but one thing I'm noticing is that it is just puckering a lot and not sitting nice. So what I will be doing is ironing it. And then, if it's still puckering a lot, I'm going to actually sew just a straight stitch about a 1/2 inch down just to keep it in place. Okay, so I am more than halfway done on this coat. I have finished up the neckline, I have pressed it and sewed it really nice so that it lays flat. I have done the same with the sleeves. I have sewed them. Okay, now all I have to do is, okay, sew up the sleeves and down the side of the body. I have to add in the pockets and add in the zipper, and then we are going to be done. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to pinning and sewing the sides, and then I will check back in for the pockets. So as I sit here pinning the sides of my jacket, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has taken the time to view my videos so far. You know, I work a full-time job. I come home in the evening or on the weekends and I work on this, and you know, it's a bit of my passion project, and you know, I've definitely used sewing and creating as a therapy almost. And I don't know about anyone else out there, but you know, it helps relieve a lot of stress. And I think it's important that, you know, you take time for yourself and for the hobbies that make you happy and bring you joy. So I hope that if you're starting your sewing journey, or if you are sewing, you know, I hope it continues to make you happy and bring you joy. Now I am just going to be hemming my pockets before I place it on the jacket. It's just going to give it a cleaner look that way and be easier for me to sew. Okay, so now that I have both pockets sewn on, I am going to move on to the zipper. As I mentioned, I got the zipper a little long, so it is so important that we line up the bottom part because that is where it's going to latch. We need that bottom part. The top part we can easily sew again just to make another stopper. So let's go ahead and start doing that. Okay, so I now have 1/2 of the zipper sewed on. It is looking so good. So basically what I did is I just took the raw edges and sewed the zipper right to the raw edges. I will be doing an overlock stitch just to clean this up. I will also be overlocking the inside. Yeah, so let's continue on and finish up this zipper. So I have finally finished the coat. We have the pockets, the zipper, and it turned out so good. I made sure to overlock all the seams on the inside so it comes out really clean and finished. I also overlocked the seams by the zipper to prevent any fraying. I think it turned out so good. The sleeves are a perfect length. And you know, the one thing is making your own clothing, you're the first person to pick apart any thing that you've done wrong or anything that doesn't look perfect. For me, it's how the seams don't line up exactly on the sides, but it is such a small thing that bothers me about this coat. And one thing I want to say is that when you are sewing, there are going to be things maybe that you don't like about a garment, but you know, never stop sewing just because something isn't working out or it's not going right. You know, that's how we learn, and that's how we learn to correct our mistakes. So I want to encourage everyone out there to keep going. You know, the things that you think are really big and noticeable actually really aren't, because when you're wearing a garment and you're going about your everyday life, you know, it's not that noticeable. I'll show you guys the back as well. I did do a little fold here just to take in the fabric slightly, so you can see that at the top. But overall, I'm in love with how the coat turned out. It's actually really warm. I'm wearing it inside because right now outside it is so gross out. It is slushy, it is cold, you know, it's snowing. It's just not nice weather outside, but I can already tell I am so warm in the coat right now, and that's gonna be perfect. It's gonna last me into spring and into fall, you know, and on those warmer winter days here in Canada. So I just love how the coat turned out. So thank you so much for tuning in to me making this coat out of thrifted fabric. I hope it inspires you to make a piece of clothing out of fabric that you've thrifted. So stay tuned. I have so much more stuff coming your way.